Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Daily Combat Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Stockbridge, and joining me as always is my co-host extraordinaire. The double biceps are out. It is in the contract. He's legally obliged, so the double biceps do find their way out every episode here on the Daily Combat Podcast. That, ladies and gentlemen, is Hollywood Matt Connolly. And of course, our guest today. So we've got Wayne and Lorraine March. Wayne and Lorraine March, well, can I say bodybuilding icons? I'm going to put it out that way. I know.
Royalty.
Bodybuilding royalty. Local bodybuilding royalty, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to delve deeply into, well, first and foremost, how it is that you've found yourself in a gym one day, lifting weights, trying to get bigger and stronger, and then how perhaps that's progressed through to you guys now having such an eye for what it takes to be great at that sport that you're now judges in that very sport. And perhaps we can delve a little bit in behind all of that stuff as well. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you.
Wonderful work.
So,
yeah, well, it's great to have you. And so this podcast is all about the daily combat that everybody has inside, as well as, combat and strength sports. And, bodybuilding is one of those sports that's kind of been on the peripheral of mainstream consciousness for now best part of 4 decades. And so I'm often curious as to what people's first exposure was to the sport in the first place. For me, it was seeing my mate Daniel on the side of the road one day and going, how the hell did he get like that? And then very quickly being introduced to pumping iron and going, that's how you get like that. Right, okay, excellent. And it all made sense to me. So how was it for you guys? What was your first exposure to bodybuilding, weight training, and that whole gym culture?
You want to start?
You can start, I think, because you were the one that was responsible for getting me into it.
Really? Okay, so it all started with you, Wayne.
It did start with me, but
it's your positive impression, your positive influence.
Lorraine did say to me one day many years ago that when I was right in the depths of my competition, I'd just won a competition. She'd come out and she was quite fascinated with the transformation she'd witnessed over those months leading in.
In you?
Yeah. She was like a not a training partner, but another person in the gym. There was in the mornings at 7 a.m. we were all there religiously, and Lorraine was one of the crew.
So Lorraine was one of the familiar faces.
She was one of the
fans. Yeah, at this stage you weren't Wayne and Lorraine. No, you were Wayne and Lorraine.
That's right. Yeah,
and
just buddies,
gym bros.
And she said to me, "Do you think I could do this?" And I went, "I think you've got good genetics." Bam! She'll tell her story, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But from that moment on, it's like a dog with a rotten bit of meat. Just once you got hold of it, just will not let go and has that burn to finish it and be the best at it. So, or
like a competing bodybuilder with a skinless breast piece and a bit of broccoli, maybe.
A bit leaner, let's say.
So how did you? What's your first memories of the gym? Where did all of that come from your perspective?
I actually walked into the gym not from a bodybuilding perspective at all. I wanted to get fitter, but it was more of a networking thing.
Right.
Because I'd only just started my own business.
Okay.
I was a sign writer. I had a local business in the Salisbury Plain area. And I was talking to one of the business people, one of the real estate guys actually, John and Colin Martin, the boys there.
Master networkers in their own right.
And they were training at the gym and they said, there's an executive class in the mornings. Maybe it might be an idea to come along.
Get juiced in with the other executives of the area.
So I get to know all the business people in that area of Salisbury Plain, which spanned out to Elizabeth and beyond and to Gawler and got to know a lot of those guys. So it was a networking thing. And I gained a lot of mates that I still see today. A lot of business opportunities come along and, regular customers. And then I met a girl that was competing and she'd come up from Mount Gambier and she did need a training partner. Her name was Karen Brooksby. So anyone that knows early 90s bodybuilding would know Karen was a state and not national champion, but competed nationally. I decided, she asked me, would you help me compete or prepare?
So and did you know what was involved in that at that stage?
Well, not really. I knew she was going to. I thought she was on the stage with the bathing costume and didn't know much about it until we went along to a competition. So I helped her prepare for her first comp and went in her debut.
Right, and was this your first competition that you've
got? This was the first comp I ever saw.
So you're helping somebody prepare for a competition, not really knowing what even a competition is.
I've seen a few photos.
I tell you, you're a man with confidence. I tell you.
I went to the comp and I'm waiting. All the divisions are coming through, and the Masters came on. And at that time I was 34, 33, 34, so a bit of a late bloomer to start.
So you're thinking some easy pickings on the stage right now.
All these guys walk out, 40 years old, and I looked at them, and first of all, I'm like, how the hell can you get on stage with such a tiny costume? Because Mr. and Mr. Average walking around, like, that's smaller than a pair of Speedos. Like, we're talking, man, you're comfortable getting on stage like that. But I'm thinking, these guys are 40 years old plus. Mm-hmm. And I thought, man, if I can look like that in 6 years, that's just remarkable. I want to be a Masters competitor. And that was the bug for me.
Yeah.
And from that comp, I went, I'm doing that.
Huh.
So I went, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it well. So I took a lot of leaves out of Karen's, her book of how she prepared, and she introduced me to some trainers. And it was obviously about hard work in the gym and good nutrition and all of that, but it was about presentation. How do you prepare for a competition? How do you present your physique at its best? And a bit of a bodybuilding trick is, because to have the flawless physique is pretty rare. Everyone's got a weakness.
Yeah, a lot of people say that to me.
They've got the judges are looking at your faults.
Basically,
look at those guns, mate. Come on.
All about genetics.
Oh dear.
Sorry.
Anywho, so it's how to display your body at its best and hide your flaws, hide your faults.
Yeah.
And it's about posture and doing the right poses. So I did all those things. I found the right coach, I found the right nutrition, I found the right training regime, and just did it religiously.
And had you played sports as a kid? Like, what was your foundation stone for all of this?
I played baseball as a kid.
Right.
That was probably the only team sport I was really into.
Yeah.
Apart from that,
but other
tennis, but no.
Right.
Very similar.
Wasn't really into football. I know. I love baseball. I like the power of baseball. I was a very strong pitcher and fast runner and pretty well all round. I didn't field that much, but I was a batter and pitcher with my strengths.
Yeah.
So I like the power sports. I had a fascination with powerlifting.
Right.
So it's
but hadn't been involved in it, or just saw it on the peripheral and thought, that's interesting.
I used to train. I went into Limbo Health Studio when I was 13 years old.
Wow.
Just started high school.
Huh. So this is quite an early fascination with weights then?
Yeah. And I went away from it. You know, you get your driver's license and you just become a
alcohol,
distracted
women.
teenager.
Yeah, there you go.
You lose. You get a passion for something else other than chasing girls.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that was really, I developed quite quickly. I mean, at 13, you're growing like a weed. There's a lot of hormones going on.
Yeah.
And the teachers at school were like, gee, well, you're starting to really shape up. And they were always, especially my PE teacher, was always looking for something a little bit different for the class to do rather than run around the oval. Yeah. Let's go visit a running track down at one of the professional stadiums, or let's go hockey on basketball stadiums. We were always going on field trips. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, why don't you go to my gym? So we go to Limbo Health Studio.
And how long have you been training at this stage?
I've probably been training for about a year.
Okay, so you're pretty dedicated.
I'm nearly 14 years old.
Right.
Second year high school.
Okay.
And let's face it, that created the foundation for what you achieved later in life.
It did. It's sort of like, it did.
Because that's
a
how
good point.
the whole process works. It's when the hormones kick in, particularly for a male, and they're growing. If they want to be a future bodybuilder, the time that they want to start going through that process would be through that puberty stage. And I'm not saying, ridiculous amounts of gym work and nutrition and all of that. I'm talking about a moderate type of exercise with good nutrition involved sets the foundation for that bodybuilder in their later years, without a doubt. Because if you look at the history of a lot of people that we know, people like yourself that did 100 push-ups every night, I don't think it was that. One of your biggest strengths in your bodybuilding was your chest.
Yeah.
So and
so
the
that
same
hung,
with cyclists.
that muscle memory kind of stayed.
Yeah, absolutely 100%.
Well, I'll my little bodybuilding weights things is if there is a body part that I might ever have, that's it's arms. And for about 3 years, for 15 minutes, I would get those little plastic dumbbells that you get from Big W that I think had sand in them.
Yeah, I had those as well.
weighted sand.
Yeah.
And just for 15 minutes I'd just do arm curls, and then when I got bored with that, I'd do like some shoulder presses, and that was the whole workout, and then I put it down. But I did it for time, and it started off like 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then I think maybe maxed out at 20 minutes, but it was like 20 minutes of just arm curls, and then okay, time's up, put it down.
Yeah.
And then when I picked up weights in my say late teens, early 20s, that was the body part that kind of grew. Yeah, everything else stayed small. But that was the unfortunate bit. So okay, we're getting to the bottom of this. So 13 years old, you've started doing weight. Who encouraged you to do weights, and how did that start? Because usually at 13 you're not really encouraged to go to the gym, and these days a lot of gym owners would probably shun you if they saw you walking in the gym by yourself. So who was kind of behind you there saying this is a good idea, or encouraging you to
I
keep going
thinking
along?
back to just make me feel really old, the Superman thing. Like the well-built, even if you go back to Steve Reeves, like the real
Steve
early
Reeves, the original
stuff.
Superman, yeah.
And Tarzan, like what's his name? He was an Australian actor. Can't think of his name. Anyway, so the physiques of those guys, I thought, wow, that's something pretty impressive. And they were older guys too.
And
I think
Steve
Arnold
Reeves was Mr. something, Mr. Universe, or Mr. back then.
Yeah,
when that was
Mr. Universe, I think, or Mr. America, or he was definitely a champion in that era.
I think for Frank Zane, if you know, back to the classic days of Arnie and Frank Zane, and
a lot of
Franco
people
Colombo
say
and all of that.
You're very similar to Frank Zane.
Very similar build.
Apart from the body, everything else is the same.
From the neck up.
Oh, dear.
So I think it was a mixture of all those things, and there was an Arnold Push too. There was something about that,
Yeah.
and that was real early in his career too. He's won a few universe titles at that. Well, that was early. What was that? Early 70s.
On the Olympia from 70 to 75, and then came back and won it in 80.
It was real early.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the push for that.
Yeah.
And the school I went to, I mean, I walked straight past this gym every day.
Huh.
So I'm like, that's where the weights are. So before catching the bus home every day, I would go to the gym.
And what did your family feel about you doing weights? Because, I mean, let's put this into context for a lot of younger people that might be watching. That was really unusual for a young person in their teens to be doing weights at all, or even to be attending a gym on a regular basis was a bit of made you a bit of a freak or a bit unusual. How did your peers respond to that at school?
They thought it was a bit strange because everyone else is playing football and everyone else is playing soccer and all of the team stuff, which I didn't really like.
You're just eating tuna out of tin.
Well, as a teenager, you can eat whatever the hell you like. That's a bit later on when I started getting a bit more specific about food. I was just throwing down burgers and Chico rolls, if I remember.
It all worked.
Let's get our carbs from the Chicos, you know? And have a lot of chicken. Yeah, a bit unusual. My dad was a wrestler back in his early days. So he was quite an athletic, old time wrestling, not the Mario Milano stuff. We're talking way back, Olympic sort of wrestling.
Stuff. Yeah, Roman
So
Greco.
he probably encouraged me quite a lot just to think about being in good shape, looking after your body, you know. So he was an influence there. My friends none of them were into it at all.
Yeah.
So I was really the black sheep.
Yeah.
So what made you stop all of a sudden and then all those years later decide that this was something apart from the fact that you wanted to do networking and so on? What was the driving force for you to then pick that up again when you were early 40s or no, not quite 40?
I was 30.
It's a bit of a hiatus. You know who else has a similar story? Jesus. We know what happened up to 13 and then nothing between 13 and 28. And it seems like there's a bit of a similar gap.
There's some parallels.
I just wondered, did you become a carpenter during that time?
It was a long apprenticeship.
So yeah, because you're starting really young. You're 13 years old, and then so what happened in the interim? The dark times.
I'm trying to wonder what pulled me away from it. I think it was distraction of not peer pressure is the wrong word, but just going with the flow of what all the other kids were doing and wanting to be involved.
Like that social
and I was
life.
so left field of everyone else that I don't know, maybe I just wanted to be part of the gang, you know. So it went along with the guys. Got out a few years ago, I guess 18 months goes by, and I get my license as soon as I possibly could.
Yeah,
I wanted my driver's license, so 16, bang, I got my license.
Key to freedom.
And then boom, off, and you know.
Yeah.
I think in that era as well, it was this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get your driver's license, then you find a girl, you get married, you have children, you buy the house. Whereas it's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
And that obviously was never Wayne entirely, because it was around the time that he decided to start competing that we met.
Huh.
And since then, he has reinvented himself probably half a dozen times, and basically does anything and everything that he wants to try his hand at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
So this is the cycle of life. So that was that early cycle of you introducing yourself to weights, and then all those years later rekindling the love that you perhaps left all those years earlier.
the early passions came back. Sort of early, I wanted to do that to a high level.
Yeah.
And then, like Lorraine just touched on, that life gets in the way, and you do all the stuff. You got to get an apprenticeship, you get a job, you
do what everyone expects you to
all
do.
that sort of.
Yeah.
I've met so many people that have done this, and then eventually you come back to what is the real you, I guess. You know, what do I really want?
Yeah.
And what really makes me happy, and what lights my fire. And that was a burn that had been simmering for a long time until I saw that Masters comp. And I'm like, wow, I haven't picked up a weight for 20 years nearly.
Yeah.
And then you get the itch and you get back in and you pick up that weight.
Yeah.
And you're like, I remember this. I love this.
The weights were just waiting
It's
for
just bang.
you. Yeah.
The hunger's there.
And how did
and
the
it was-
body respond early on?
Well, I remember walking into the gym and
I'll just get you to pull the mic a little bit.
Oh.
There we go.
walked into the gym and I met one of the main instructors there, and I think he took one look at me and went, bloody hell, you've got a good foundation, because I still had the chest. Not that I went to the gym much, but I was still doing push-ups. I was still looking after myself.
So you kept...
I was doing a lot of...
A little maintenance regime going on there.
I had this, I still want to be strong and healthy and la. So that was always part of my life to do that. So I developed an upper body that was quite different than someone that had really, really never stepped into a gym for He went, bloody hell. And I responded so much to arms and chest and back sort of exercises that within, it seemed like not very long at all, but let's say it's a year of consistency, it was like, geez. And then the whisper of a first-timers competition came along from Karen, the girl I competed with.
After a year or so, you were already kind of edging. So in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I'm getting on stage from the get-go. So that's your motivation. And then within a year, you're starting to think, okay, I think I'm getting ready now. I'm almost there. That's incredible. That's a really quick transformation, isn't it?
It's funny because you get on a treadmill and you just keep doing the same thing. And there's a point where you don't really notice what the changes that are happening to you, but you start noticing comments from people that are the outside people
Wolf
watching.
whistles,
You're
that
just
type of
doing your
thing.
thing.
Yeah.
But,
Love letters.
yeah, well, no, I'm not going there. Not going there. But yeah, when people start saying, "Bloody hell, you're really starting to develop," and when Karen came up to me, she said, "I know you've been helping me with comps, but have you ever thought about?" I went, oh, well, I saw those Masters guys. I'm nothing like that. She goes, it's a progressional thing. We've got a comp coming up that's got a first-timers section, which I'd never had before. And this was in a Whyalla competition.
Okay.
And the Iron Triangle Classic, they used to call it back in the day.
Yeah. Hello, yeah.
So I took a trip to Whyalla.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Are you yourself a veteran, or you just remember seeing it on the calendar?
No, I do. Yeah, they ran a few of the. It's called ICN now. It's the INBA, the naturals competitions. They had a Whyalla thing happening for a few years down there as well.
They did.
Yeah.
That was my first competition.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, here we go.
Yeah. So I went up and won the first timers in Whyalla.
Wow.
That was in 93.
How'd you feel on stage?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Scared as hell. Good.
How were the briefs? Were they as tight as you
as
imagined?
small as the ones that I saw. I adjusted to the fact that I feel comfortable wearing these now. Because I looked around, because what I was doing was I was competing in front of an educated crowd. If I was wearing that on a stage in a shopping mall,
John Martin's
whole different ballgame, because everyone's going, who's this freak? But everyone was there with friends and family on stage, so everyone knew what they were seeing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be the best of the bunch.
Yeah.
So anyway, my regime was, and I've done it many times before when I've been on other stages for different things, is get comfortable with your environment. So before anyone was there, or anyone was out in the seats, the stadium's empty, I snuck away from the crew who were getting ready backstage and walked through the curtain and just stood there in the middle on the cross looking around going,
That's a good idea.
this is going to be full.
Feeling it out.
This is my spot. This is where I've got to perform. So I just had to break that ice. I didn't want to walk out there stone cold. I would have froze.
Yeah.
So I got my environment in my head.
I do the same thing with ring announcing. You know, just being out there and in that space and just breathing it in before anybody else really gets there, or before the eyes are on you, and then you're just like, okay.
Yeah, comfortable with the space.
I own it now.
And the scale of it. Because it's not, you're not in the gym posing in front of a mirror anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the thing was in my head is because whenever I was doing my routine, there's always be my trainer or my training partner with me, and they'd always go, for Christ's sake, Wayne, will you smile? Because I was just concentrating on getting it right. And I'd always go, I'll smile on the day. It's fine. I just got to. So it was like internalise it, and then I'll personalise it, and the showman will come out on stage.
Yeah.
And I did that. I said, now it's my time to show off. So it was, this 90 seconds is mine.
Wow.
And it was bang, when the lights were on and it was on, and they were like, man, you're a whole different man on stage.
I think from a judging perspective now, one of the biggest things that we see, have seen, it's far better now because they have lots of posing classes and people are taught really well how to present themselves on stage. But prior to that, the men would come out and they would look like Dave looks right now, just poker-faced, no smile, no expression, no showmanship, or you'd get the occasional one that had a bit of showmanship. But the women learnt how to smile on stage. So as soon as you walked onto that stage, you were on stage, you were smiling, no matter what. You just did it as an automatic part of the being on stage. But men didn't tend to do that. They do more so now, and because they're coached to. Because it's like, this is how people are going to see you. And if you want to shine above everybody else, you want to have a presence like nobody else when you stand on that stage.
Yeah, I remember Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of his biographies that he wrote, he would say that key point, as soon as I walk out on stage, he goes, the first impression you make, he goes, I want the people to see that I know that I'm the winner of this show. He's like,
absolutely.
So look on my face is I'm the winner. Like, I've got it. Like, check me out. Like, look at me. And so every pose, you're drawn to the guy who's like, I'm the best.
Yeah.
And when you're judging, when people are first coming out onto the stage, if you're a good judge, you've got first, second, and third in that first few seconds.
Yes, exactly. You can tell instantly.
Process of elimination, and you've picked out your top 3 to 5 out of that group already.
Yep.
And then you're going through a process of elimination while you're going through the posing round.
You're basically going from worst to best.
So like get them on the fringe. We get to the people that's like, okay.
So that exactly right. That impression when you first walk out there and to own that stage is the most important thing to grab the judge's attention. You may be in their top 3 initially and you may drop down, but you may also go to number 1 throughout that, but you've made a presence.
And keeping that, if you're not in the first call out, or if you're still on stage but not actively involved in what's happening, to still be, I guess they call it standing relaxed. You're not relaxed at all.
No relaxing.
You are still being seen, and you can still be judged. By,
well,
like,
you are.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, I know occasions where I've competed, where I've been competing with up to 20, 30 women in a tall class.
Yeah.
So, I want to be in that top 6 of that group of women. I've got to make a pretty darn good impression when I first get out there. And there is no relaxing on stage. And sometimes we would be up on stage for anywhere between 20 and 30 minutes without a break.
That's hard.
Posed, smiling.
Dehydrated,
sweating. And when you were doing back poses, you'd be looking at another competitor and smiling at them, going, hang in there, chatting to each other on stage. It's, come on, smile, get on with it.
It was funny when they do
hard work.
Sorry, so you keep me finish your thing.
But, go.
You kicked off a memory because like every time somebody turns away from, like, they're facing their back to the crowd and their face is completely different to when they're facing the crowd. No, it's just like, and then turn around.
Get your composure back. You've got to look comfortable up there.
So is it after this first competition that you met then? Was that around that time, or was it the Masters competition? So you've had that Whaler competition. Is it around the time?
You'd already competed in the Whaler show.
You
were well and truly entrenched in what you were.
And I was preparing for the 94 A and B. Yeah. So it was the beginning of... No, hang on.
Been 95, 96. Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. He was well and truly into competing, you know.
So you'd seen the transformation from a bit of a distance across from the room.
Yeah, a little bit. I do remember he was definitely well and truly into his competition days, and because there was a newspaper article that was up on the mirror in the gym at Pro Fitness, and I remember looking at it thinking, because I was single at the time, and I thought, I could never be married or be with anyone that looks like It's true.
And now you're not, so it worked out well.
27 years later.
It is always interesting seeing the transformation of competitors that, you know, over those months when there's a competition leading up, as I'm working in the gym at the moment, but you'll see, you know, it's like competitions maybe 3 months out and the transformation over those 12 weeks and, you know, just the definition coming in and the competitors sort of, you know, because they're restricting calories or they're, you know, they're going with less carbohydrates and they're getting weaker and they're getting tired and they're getting grumpy. But they're getting really lean.
Very emotional.
That's right.
1 week out. It's just about
I had one girl that she dropped her earphone thing into the stepper and it was stuck under there. And like, I can get it out, but it takes like 10 minutes to unscrew the whole thing. Anyway, she was in tears. Like, I was like, I get it. Like, it's all fine. Just, you know, because she was competing in like a week or something. But it was like, she hasn't eaten and
that was the final straw.
And oh, my headphone. It's ruined my cardio. Yeah, just so those. But yeah, that change that happens. And then, you know, obviously everyone starts getting tanned leading up to the show, but they're dehydrating and everything like that. And then, you know, they'll have the show and then the transformation back to, you know, if that is a
really important one.
It is.
Just a little bit of my history. At the time when we met, I was doing a degree in agriculture. So I was studying science, so particularly biology and how to grow a cow and sheep.
Perfect for bodybuilding.
How to grow meat, how to grow muscle.
So I kind of thought to myself, you know, the way that the food was structured for different animals for different reasons, well, I thought to myself, well, why is a human being any different? Well, we're not. We're all animals. But what it did give me the ability to do was be able to read nutritional information and science books and actually understand the science behind how food was generated through your body.
Interesting.
Easiest way I can put it.
Yeah.
So then working out exactly, well, what is a protein and what does that do? What is it for? Well, that's for repair and recovery. What is a carbohydrate? What does that do? That fuels all of your systems of your body and turns into glycogen that's stored in your liver, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what does blood sugar do? What do sugars do in your body? Well, if you want to lose body fat, you need to have a consistent blood sugar level. And the only way you can do that is to make sure that you're eating food that is low glycemic index and at particular times of the day. So that gave me, and I could go on that subject for an hour and educate people on exactly how all of that works in a very basic format. And that is the science behind getting lean for a bodybuilding show.
Yeah.
And while
so
you
were
have
you familiar with that? Were you familiar with that before you started bodybuilding yourself? So you'd already had that information kind of there,
Yes.
and then as you're starting to do weight training yourself and seeing what's going on, you think,
I know what to do with this.
Okay.
So if I do this at this particular point in time, then this is the result that I'm going to have.
Interesting.
So, you know, and you burn body fat while you're asleep at night. You know, we all think it's the amount of cardio and how fast we go. Well, basically that's not the case. You lose body fat by keeping your blood sugar levels really careful, like very, very level. When you're doing your cardio, you want to be doing your cardio to a point where you can still hold a conversation with someone, but you are still puffing. And you need to be doing that cardio in a state where you're depleted of glycogen, so depleted of carbohydrate. So when is that? First thing in the morning when you wake up, after you haven't had a carbohydrate since around 12, 1 o'clock, depending on the individual person and their needs. And then, of course, you're going to be burning body fat. And you're burning body fat throughout the night while you're sleeping, and then you're doing it again. You know, so it's a really scientific process. And it's interesting because I hear a lot about all these new things now, or have you heard about that and you heard about that? And I, without being disrespectful, I've competed at a very high level, but I've also taken other people to a very, winning world titles and in NABBA shows and that type of thing. So, and I've used that same base, and it's just science. Yeah. There is no magic pill.
That's right.
There is no magic pill. Yeah. It's very scientific about a process of reducing body fat and how to build muscle.
And were you already chipping away at that in the gym at this stage, or what brought you to the gym?
I weighed 48 kilos.
Incredible.
Yeah, and I'm
nothing. Yeah.
5'7".
Right.
And continuously having problems with my back, and just seemed to be at the physio every 5 minutes. And he said to me one day, look, you honestly, there's not a lot more I can do for you, except you need to get into the gym and build some muscle. That's the best thing that you can do for yourself right now. So I did. I took that quite literally. Went into the gym, but because I was so frail, I couldn't even lift one plate.
Right.
So I would hide in one of the other rooms where they had all the pin-loaded machines. So I was taking the pins out and I couldn't use the machine.
Wow.
So I had to carefully sort of build myself up a little bit, and I did over a period of time. That was working.
Did you feel you weren't malnourished, or had you always been really
I'd
slender
always been really
and
slim.
petite?
Always.
Yeah.
There was no underlying reason for me to be as slim as I was. It was just pure genetic that I was that slim. So I slowly worked my way out of that room and got brave enough to go into the big gym, and that's when I met Wayne.
The big boy.
And then he started to teach me how to use weights.
Destiny.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and technique. So technique is paramount. So technique, and I had the scientific background of understanding nutrition. So then we put those two combinations together.
Dominated the world.
I don't know about that. Combine those two things together, and I got taught how to train, and I helped you with nutrition. So, yeah.
It sounds like an organic process of you being around the gym and slowly working yourselves into each other's circles there a little bit as you both became more enthusiastic about competing, and you're obviously thinking, wow, I'm going to get on stage, I've got to do this, and you're thinking, well, I've kind of got this skill set, I can bring that, and I can see what these guys are kind of trying to do, I can maybe help with that as well. And so did you think seriously about competing at that stage, or?
Wayne actually did know quite a bit about how to diet for a competition, whereas I knew the stuff underneath that. Right. So the kind of the two, him understanding it and me bringing the other part, brought it all together, so to speak, didn't it?
Yeah.
What was the question?
Just like you had
whether I
thought about competing even that early.
Well, I started to grow quite quickly, so my body clearly wanted all the nutrition I could give it. My body wanted to train.
Give me weights.
Yeah, it really did. And I got stronger and stronger, and I got stronger and stronger really, really quickly.
Stronger than mine.
Yeah. And then one...
No ego over here. No. Just saying.
And then, one day I said to Wayne, do you think I might be any good at this bodybuilding thing? And this was about 18 months into training.
Okay.
And he said, yeah, I actually think you would. And it was about 2 years later I competed in my first Worlds.
Wow.
So straight into Worlds, or did you do anything preliminary to that?
Wow, it was
it was South Australia. Well, the difference, again, with competing at that particular point in time in that federation was that you had to win a state title to be eligible to go to an Australian title.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you had to win an Australian title to be eligible to go to the world titles.
That's right.
So when you actually got to where you were going and you were on the world stage, you were with the best in the
of the
world.
best, yeah.
It wasn't, the first 5 people or anything like that. And not that I disagree with how it all works now, I don't, but that's exactly what it was like. So when you were up there with England, Russia, and all the other countries, you were literally with their number one person at that time in the world.
Wow.
That's right. Yeah.
So it was quite a different
And how,
process.
so how quickly did that happen for you? So within 18 months of starting training, you're finding yourself
Starting
preparing?
to compete, and then I competed, it was
95 was your first comp. That was why
95, and I won my first Australia in 97.
Jeez.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Which class was it? Was it figure?
Figure tall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was well and truly bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was the science that we really applied, the biology and chemistry on a consistent basis, keeping it really clean all the time and pretty strict regime with 1 meal a week. Lose your mind, eat what you want. Just the cheat meal day was
And you
sanity.
As you were mentioning, you're kind of almost coming to this late after initially training early in your life, in your early teens. You're coming to it now in your mid-30s. How old are you at this stage?
I was 26. Would that be around 26, 27?
So not young, not old, like a good...
So, I probably started at about 25 at that weight.
Yeah.
So, so my body just wanted to grow.
You went from 48. Do you remember you sort of put on muscle, got stronger, and then you got to a point where you're like, hey, I might look at competing. And were you at a certain, did you move up to say 60 kilos or something? And then it was like when you went for competition.
I remember the first Worlds in Spain. I was at my absolute leanest. There's a funny story behind that. Absolute leanest, and I weighed 58 kilos, and I was solid as a rock.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
lean.
off season, I would sit
very
between 62 and 65.
Right.
But lean to the point of
Paper thin skin.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow, lean.
Wow.
Yeah, where you would literally wake up every morning and you would look different again.
Wow.
And that was that was the
vascularity was
amazing
amazing.
part.
Right.
And knowing, and I remember coaching different athletes that had the ability to get that type of leanness as well. They just had that disposition to it. And I would have them eating steak. And I can't eat steak. You need steak, you need vitamin B, you need this nutrition, you need that nutrition.
Yeah.
I said, wait until you wake up in the morning after you've had that piece of steak and those carbohydrates that you will eat because I've asked you to, and wait until you wake up in the morning, and they would wake up lighter and leaner.
Yeah.
And more vascular.
And full of
So
muscle
again,
belly,
it was
good
the-
nutrition.
Yeah.
And when we talk about having a meal off, that wasn't just a religious sanity. It was partly sanity, but it wasn't just a religious sanity thing. It's because you can't continue to put your body through that process and deprive it of any of its nutrition. Like, you've got to have all different proteins in your diet, not just chicken. And you can't continue to let your body do that because it will shut down at some point.
Right.
It will say, I've had enough. Okay, I've met my level. So that's when you have your meal off and you eat whatever the heck you feel like. You're not going to be able to put loads of food into yourself anyway. And you're tricking yourself.
Yeah.
And your body will absorb it. You will look amazing.
It sort of
the next day.
kickstarts the metabolism again for the next week.
You got
It gives you that foundation or that energy to speed things up, and the body just,
But you
it's a
need
machine, just starts chewing up all the calories and really using the nutrition well.
It's one of those things, isn't it? Like where you stuff your face with like chocolate and pizza and lollies and donuts and whatever, and then the next day, that's the last thing you want. You're like, lasts a week, and then by the time you get to like Friday, you're like, oh, I can't wait till that.
We used to love breakfast.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
porridge was
breakfast.
our main favourite because you might be able to put a bit of honey in it. You know what I mean?
Big spender.
Exciting.
That was the big carb
I had
meal.
this microwave fish stuff, which I would never eat now. But it was like when I was dieting, it was like the best thing. It was like, yes.
I know. It's funny the things that you look back and you think, oh, how did I eat that?
Yeah. It was weird. Did you have this, like, when I was dieting for a competition, I started craving all these foods that I would never normally eat. And I was like, I want Cocoa Pops. And I never normally eat Cocoa Pops. But I was like, I want Cocoa Pops. And it was like...
It's a real, it's a mental game.
Oh, yeah.
The whole thing is a mental game. And if you can control that and know that there is an end result, there's an end date to it. But then, like, talking about the transition from finishing the comp to the next 3 or 4 weeks, you've got to, because you're dieting down and then you've got to diet back up again.
That's right.
So you can't just introduce all this rubbish food because you're going to be, one, really, really sick.
Yep.
2, you're going to blow up like a balloon with fluid. You're going to put weight on it, a great knot.
Yep.
Never been going back.
So having digestive enzymes and then slowly reintroducing foods and taking the pace the other way. So you're going 12, 20 weeks in, but you're going 6, 8 weeks out.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're going to be able to maintain that physique and not damage yourself, really.
Yeah.
Because we've seen it time and time again.
Oh, absolutely. I see it as well.
It's really scary.
Yeah.
So, that mental
so
game.
disciplined for so long, and then it's like pushing to get to that point. They hit that point, they have the show, they do well or whatever, the show is finished, and then it's just stuff your face, and it's like a month later, it's like, wow, you've put on 20 kilos of not good weight,
And it's a very judgmental thing too. So, and I probably still worry about it a little bit too much myself now. It's just that people kind of expect you to be a certain way all the time, and that is not reality.
No, exactly, yeah.
So when you do put a little bit of weight on, it's noticeable. And if you've been at a certain level, then you kind of feel like eyes on me, the eyes are on me.
Yeah.
Am I being judged because I've put on a little bit of weight again? I'm not as lean as normal.
Bodybuilders are already suffering
You know?
from dysmorphia as it
Yeah.
is, and all of this is going on.
Being a 55-year-old woman now, I can't possibly expect to look that way.
Right.
I'm going to look like a normal 55-year-old woman,
Right.
maybe in some cases, maybe a little bit better shape. I don't know, but I love cooking.
I love eating.
Yes, this works out very well. Yeah.
But the calories are higher these days.
Life changes.
It is such a dangerous game with that mental side of it, because if people are getting all those compliments and positivity while they're, leading up to a competition, man, you're looking fantastic. Oh, I can't believe how lean you are. You're going to blow them away. It's going to be amazing. Look at your abs. Da, 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 da. And then, they have the competition where they're as lean as they possibly be, and they've got all the photos and they've got the videos, and that's what they're looking at as to, hey, this is me, and it's proud. And then when they go back to like a normal training regime, where it's not like you're not going to be super lean all year round, like you can't maintain that. It's not possibility. So even if you're in still good shape, but if you're comparing yourself to the way that you were on that day, on that stage, which you can only be for a couple of hours, really, that's where you've really got to have a very strong discipline mentally to say, I know that the reason I looked like that was because of those months of dieting and training leading up to that moment, and that is not a consistent and realistic expectation to look like that all year round. So if people put that pressure on themselves to say, that's me, that's my identity, but you can't look like that all year round. But if people for their only interaction of seeing you, say like a pro bodybuilder or somebody that they only see on stage, say they're Mr. Olympia and they're super shredded or whatever, and then 6 months later the guy's in the off season, he's put on some body fat and all the rest of it, and it's like they go, oh geez, this guy's letting himself go. And it's like,
no, he hasn't.
He hasn't. He's still training.
Not at all.
But it's like, for them to sort of, you'd almost have to, in a way, shield yourself from people's comments, positive and negative, because it's like, it's nice that you're saying that, but I'm okay, great. I'm focused on what I'm doing, because if I let that be my source of inspiration, it will go away when I return back to normal.
Absolutely, 100%.
So you guys had your first competition really within a couple of years of each other, by the sounds of things.
93 was my first. Lorraines was 95.
Yeah. And so, where did that competition path take you?
Well, 93 was the win of the Wayala Classic.
Kicked off well.
Kicked off, won the first time, which was great. I was in the novice and I got third in the novice in the same comp, so I did 2 sections there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on a bit of a high there.
Yeah.
Adelaide Classic came along. I was still lean, and there was a lot of comps coming along, and you can compete too often. And I probably got into that groove a little bit.
Yep.
That I competed again 2 months later in the Adelaide Classic, so I didn't have too much downtime. I stayed lean, but I, like you were saying, you can't do that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apart from anything, you don't grow.
Yeah.
You can't. You always want to be bigger and better next time you're on stage. So I didn't really grow, but my condition was still really good, and I got third in the novice. That year, it's funny how things aligned. The Australia titles were held at Festival Theatre.
Huh. Which
And
is
I'm like,
local here in Adelaide.
When am I
for
ever going to compete in Festival
listeners.
Theatre?
Yeah.
I've got to do that. So I did that as well. So I've done 3 comps in a row. I was wasted by the end of 94. I was absolutely wasted. That was 90. No, that was leading into 94.
But your impression after having had those 4 competitions was it that I want to do more, or I'm never doing that again?
No, I was hungry.
You were hungry for more?
I think realistically, if you sensibly competing every 2 years is probably a better time frame, because so many competitions available now, so it's easy to be tempted to get up there again, because it's just such a buzz, and and when you're in that training format, it keeps you on track.
Yeah.
But you don't really grow. So I think every 2 years is probably, you can get off season, you can not let loose, but eat lots of good food, get back to power lifting regimes, like getting heavy and getting strong.
Yeah.
Breaks down muscle fibre, you repair, you grow bigger. I mean, from my first comp at 70 kilos, my last comp I was 82.
Huh.
It was huge.
So that's from 93 to 99.
Right. That's
So I'd improved a lot of, and that's lean
12
muscle
kilos of
weight.
muscle,
You put a lot of chicken breast, that amount of chicken breast on a bench, that's a shitload of muscle.
It's a lot. Yeah.
So it just takes time.
So you had that initial flurry of competitions, maybe did 1 or 2 too many, and then after that, did you think, okay, it sounds like you got the bug, and then it was just, okay, what's coming next? Was that, how do I plan this? What am I doing next?
Well, I was supporting Lorraine. Lorraine, so we got together as a couple end of 94, and then I did a comp in 95, which had, there was...
So you're both training, but you've not yet competed?
Yeah. No, you hadn't.
I hadn't competed yet.
You're both training together, and now you're helping each other prepare. And
I was helping Lorraine prepare for the Wayala, and then soon after that was a natural show here with Wayne McDonald. I won the intermediates in that, but there was also a couples. Which they hadn't done.
Couples,
They hadn't done couples routines.
And
they were so beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
Done well, they were just so theatrical.
Do you remember
It was
Lee
a
Priest
good
did one
routine.
with his mum? Have you seen that?
I did not see that. I did not see that.
She was a competitive bodybuilder as well. Sort
Really?
of piece
Oh,
of
I had no
inspiration.
idea.
Yeah, they did a routine together.
That's amazing.
So we did that, and that was my last comp until 99. So I stopped in 95 after the couples routine we did. And 99, that was the focus then. I'm going to go full steam until I turn 40, win the Masters, and
And won it?
Yeah.
1999 Masters.
And then retired.
Oh, I went to Melbourne, and that was a big fork of the road for me, because
Tell us about that.
it was almost like I'd itched my itch as much as I wanted to itch. It sounds stupid. No, I'd achieved my goal. I won the state Masters competition.
Yeah.
And that was really, like I said, the first competition I saw those 40-year-old guys.
Yeah, that was very,
And
very
I want-
clear in your mind.
I want to win that.
Yeah.
So that was my hunger. So I did that. And then I'm in shape. The comp's 2 weeks away. Why not do the nationals? And Kim Johncock, Kim,
Yep.
fantastic competitor, world-class guy. He was in it too, and I really wanted to be on stage with him.
Yeah.
I knew I wouldn't beat him, but if I kept going, I thought maybe I could. But anyway, Melbourne was my last competition.
Yeah.
And it was a lineup of 12 scary-looking fellas, like really, really big guys that have been there for a long time. I was probably one of the lightest on stage. I was at 81. I'd lost a little bit more weight. But at that leanness and when you're shredded down, you look quite large. Because off-season I was 98.
Wow.
So I'd always trim back a lot.
Yeah.
So I like to be that 98 so I could be strong, so I could really push and grow that muscle, and then I'd bring it back. And I found that worked for me. So at 81, I got 5th out of 12, which I was absolutely stoked with. Kim won the comp.
Yeah.
And went on to win the Masters Mr. World or something, didn't he?
I think that was the year we went to Austria together.
You went to Austria, yeah. And that I hung up my hat then because I don't know, I looked around, I went, it's not something I'm going to make a living from. It's not going to reward me monetarily. It's not my career path.
Yeah.
It's just my hobby.
Yeah.
I'm happy to support the industry, which I love, and be judging. And then I took more of a mentoring role from there. I just got off stage. I was happy that I'd achieved what I wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
There was nothing more that was going to satisfy any more than winning the state show. I could have gone on and tried to win a national, but I still don't think I made a mistake by stopping.
Yeah.
My real moment was on stage with Kim. I really, really wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And he's such a good support and such a good mate. So that was brilliant. So then it was guiding other bodybuilders to present themselves at their best. I was very good at designing posing routines.
Which we don't see a lot of anymore.
No.
Yeah, it was
Which is a real
it was
shame.
good to put together that dance to
Yeah.
make that guy look his absolute best.
And
So
how did
it
you,
became like a mentoring role from there on.
as a couple, how does that mentoring role, or how did that mentoring role work? Because I know it can sometimes be difficult to receive instructions from those that love you the most. And so how did that work as you...
Wayne was always really brutal.
Okay. So that was understood from the outset.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember there was...
With a stick, or was it?
Yeah, no, he was brutal. Still is. No, I'm not joking. No, he was always completely honest about where I was at and whether or not I was ready for something or not. Mm-hmm. So no.
You need that.
Probably did so well. Yeah, I was just saying, if people are honest with you.
You need someone that's got really good eyes, and we would be the eyes for a lot of other people, but you can't be your eyes for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You need somebody. You need that constructive eye to tell you exactly where you're at and what you need.
That's right.
Yeah.
And did you
An
feel
honest
like
opinion.
that at the time? Or you're like, fuck Wayne. What are you talking about?
Okay, it depends. Occasionally I'd get a little bit upset with him.
A little bit? Okay.
I remember getting very cranky one day, competing in the universe in Newcastle in England.
That's a memory I was just saying.
And I
Burned in
didn't,
my mind.
the one and only time that I hadn't placed in the top 8. I was generally top 6. And I was very, very cranky about that. And he said, well, I judged that show and you were placed where you needed to be placed. And we didn't talk for...
I told her where I placed it, and we got the judging sheets a few hours later when she was exactly where I said she'd be.
Oh.
And I wasn't happy.
So we travelled to England.
Not just because of the performance, but then being wrong to your husband. I mean, it's terrible, isn't it?
I got over it pretty quick.
We travelled to England for the world title. It was Universe?
It was Universe,
in Newcastle, which is sort of Lorraine's family. It's where they immigrated from.
Yeah.
So it was good to catch up with a lot of family. It was a holiday thing as well. We spent a few weeks over there. And but I was sitting for my international judging accreditation on that comp with my wife's in it. So my scores didn't count, but I was sort of sitting back from the judges playing the same role just to see that they needed to know and I knew what my stuff. I could be on an international judging panel.
Yeah.
So it had to be right. So and then she asked me and I went, well, I can't lie. Because it's going to come out. And I was right.
He was right. He was right.
It is an interesting sport, though, isn't it? Because you can't really control what happens with anybody else. It's only what you can do with yourself. And it's like, if you turn up on the day and there's 7 other people that just happen to, their body genetically responded better or looked better than you, but you did absolutely everything you could, then you can't really change the result. It's like, hey, I did everything that I could have done.
It's a game it's a goal with yourself. It really is making sure that you're the best that you can be. It's not, you run a running race. Whoever wins is the fastest.
Right.
Whereas this is a very subjective sport.
Yeah.
So, you've got to be happy with what you've achieved on stage at that particular time. Like Wayne saying how happy he was to place 5th at Nationals. And he was really happy with that. Yeah. And you can see that with some of the with the Winter Olympics that we're having. Guys that are absolutely over the moon that got 6th.
Yeah.
And that's such a good thing to see.
Yeah.
Such
Absolutely.
a wonderful thing to
Yeah,
see.
Be realistic about where you fit in the scheme of things rather than have the ego and think, well, I should have won. My abs are better. It's
Yeah.
not just about the abs.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
You know, it's the whole
Exactly.
package. And
Exactly.
sometimes, especially some people have incredible genetics. We coached a Samoan fella. Was he Samoan? Or, no, a Maori guy.
Yeah.
He's a man mountain.
Oh my
This guy
God.
come from a big powerlifting background. It just had the quads that you'd die for, and
But they just
had
have
that
that
X
anyway.
factor. Just had that small waist and wasn't really lean, but he wanted to compete, and he was. I didn't know English that well. We didn't. Anyway, we tried to coach him about nutrition. He didn't quite get it. All he got was, I've got to eat a lot of chicken. That's pretty well
That's
it.
what he got it out
And
of
all
it.
he did was eat a lot of chicken and a stack of lettuce. And we found out, and he came on stage relatively lean. He could have been
He won the junior
harder,
world.
but he won the
right.
junior world.
Incredible.
We found out he was eating more KFC than anyone would normally.
That was the that was the chicken sauce. Was KFC.
So all his carbs are coming from this saturated fat and stuff,
Right.
and that's all he was eating.
Great
apart
Lord's
from
prep.
a couple of lettuces a day.
It's crazy
I
that
can't-
sport is
could not
something where
believe it.
genetics are so critical. And it's like, you can get somebody that's training, they're so disciplined and they're doing everything right. It's like you're just not going to be competitive.
That's right.
We were always quite upfront with people when they talked to us about competition and whether they had the ability or the shape, and we'd be quite honest and say, haven't quite got the right genetics if you want to get up there and give it a go.
Yeah.
But, you could look at someone and look at their general structure and know whether or not they had what it took to get to that type of level.
That's right.
And I remember one girl that was extremely successful, and she came to me one day and said, I really want to compete one day. And I said, well, have you got 5 years?
Right.
And she said, oh, really? I said, yeah, have you literally got 5 years? And well, she did her 5 years, and she did complete at Universe and Worlds levels and all of that. So,
Incredible.
and her partners are very successful as well. So, there are, it takes a while. Takes a long
So
time.
how was it that the trajectory of your career went then after that first show at Whyalla? How did things take off for you?
Well, I got second, so I wasn't happy.
Oh,
Was Wayne judging?
No, I was hiding somewhere. Second, she doesn't do second very well. Although it does fuel the fire, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, I didn't do second very well. I was a little bit grumpy.
Does not do.
And not grumpy with other people, grumpy with myself. I just thought
Did you feel you let yourself down,
Yeah,
or
well,
they
I
could have
don't-
done more, or you?
I think
you'd eaten too much lettuce.
KFC.
I think I wanted it really badly.
Yeah.
I think I really wanted it really
Yeah,
badly.
yeah.
So it was the best thing that could have happened, because then that just fueled me to go, okay, what do I need to do next? I need to get into the state shows, and I would, be fourth, fifth, last on 2 or 3 shows that I did.
395.
But just kept plodding away and working at it, and then eventually I did win my first state show.
And when was that?
That was 97 when I won my 96.
Yep,
96. So you've been
Yeah, it
competing
was.
for a couple of years at that.
96.
Yeah,
So after 2 years of trying, you've won your first state title.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was
I've
it
wa-
was a section. It wasn't the overall, was it?
No, 97, 97 was my first Australian title. So I'd won the state title to get to that. Mm-hmm. So my first state title was in 97. Then I won the 97 tall class.
Yeah.
And who do I get up with in the overall? In the short class? Pina Theodoridis.
Oh,
The
You know
goddess
Pina?
of Nabba.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
She's a genetic freak.
Right.
She still looks fantastic.
I remember just being so excited that I was actually standing next to her. But it's like every time I competed, I pulled the straw, the short straw.
She
It
was the short straw.
Yeah. You got to be kidding.
Got the best every time.
So that was 97, and then I set my heart on going to a year later in 98 and it was my determination was to win an overall Australian title so I could go to the world titles, which I did. Mm-hmm. So I won that one, and then I went to Spain in 98 in my first international show and got 4th.
Wow.
And that was short and tall combined.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
And you're both kind of doing this, and bodybuilding, certainly back then, I mean, even now, so much isn't a money-making sport as such. So how are you balancing the responsibilities of work and home life, raising family, as well as fitting all of this in?
Okay.
That was a toughie, wasn't it?
That was
a real juggler. Wow.
Well, yeah, initially I started training people, so I was working as a personal trainer. Now, I would have been, if I'd been doing what I was doing then, now I'd be worth a fortune with how much they actually charge for that process, which is just crazy. And sometimes you don't even see that, coach. It's all online.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, there's some really good stuff out there too. I'm not dissing that at all. But so I was personally training people, which was earning me a reasonable income.
Just normal people or other bodybuilders or people?
Bit of both.
All of them, yeah.
Yeah, bit of both. I had a lot of success with women that wanted to change their shape and lose weight, and be able to sustain that weight loss. So I worked a lot with women like that. I worked with lots of competitors, male and female. Some of the male competitors that I prepared for shows wouldn't tell people that it was me that was coaching them, which was always a bit of a giggle. But then they'd go on. I think it was just a bit of an ego thing, and I don't know, really. That was a bit odd sometimes, wasn't it?
Well, sometimes they were seasoned competitors that there was always a piece of the puzzle missing.
Yeah.
And a couple of them, the world standard guys, always had fluid retention on the day. So it was always a chemical thing. It was always that. And Lorraine helped through once she got in control of the dieting, and there were lots of heated conversations with them because they were so experienced and fixed in their ways. That I've been doing this for years. Yeah, well, you've been doing it wrong. Yeah. Like, let's face it, you've got second, third, you've never won. So you guided one guy through to win the Worlds in New Zealand in the year 2000, who always had a fluid retention thing. So there was always, maybe just the ego, like we were saying, they didn't want to say anything because they were seasoned, everyone knew them.
Yeah. And they wanted to take credit for this thing.
Yeah, that's
and
sort of...
To be honest, I didn't care either way. I was just there. I really just wanted to see them in their best shape. I really couldn't have cared about whether anyone knew whether it was me that had assisted in that process. But then I used to do a similar thing with the jockeys as well, where they would they'd be taking diuretics and all sorts of weird and wonderful things to reduce to get rid of their fluid to be a certain weight to get on the horse.
Right.
So then I was showing them how to sodium deplete without that process. Yeah, and that worked really successfully for a couple of the jockeys.
Wow.
They went on to be quite successful.
Have they implemented any sort of drug testing or anything with, because diuretics taken to extreme can be pretty, toxic on your livers and all the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, who knows? But it was just a process, and I was employed by people to teach them about nutrition and teach them how to reduce their fluid leading into a horse race. So that they could lose that extra 1 or 2 kilos prior to the race, excuse me, without affecting themselves mentally or, becoming fatigued or any of those things. And it worked really, really well.
There's a real science to it, isn't there? Yeah, it's like even like Formula One drivers, they'll try to bring their body weight down to a certain level because the lighter they are, the faster the car goes. But again, it's got to be that you want to be sitting in there dehydrated when you're trying to drive at 300 k's an hour.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is one of those sports where people are prone to do dangerous things, and so in your experience, have you had to pull people back from bad diet, like the really destructive behaviour when it comes to those things?
With them.
Yeah, okay, you identified that early on and thought, no.
Only going to work with people that actually are prepared to go through the process the way it's supposed to be done.
And so you had quite an illustrious, both of you enjoyed great success, but particularly Lorraine at a world-class level enjoyed a lot of success. And it seems that you moved into judging earlier than Lorraine, but it didn't take you too long to catch up. Was that just you're at the shows, you're in the environment, you've got an eye for it now, and you know what you're looking for, and you're familiar with all the key people involved. So is that how it came about that you started judging yourselves, or?
Well, the difference I don't know how it all works entirely now because we've only ever come into shows as experienced judges. But when you were becoming a judge, you had to go through a process to get there. So you were a trainee. So you were a trainee for however many shows, and then your scores would be put against what the experienced judges, and then that would determine whether or not you were going to get a seat on the table.
Right.
So once you'd gone through that training process and you had to get your accreditation, then you would be put onto a panel. And then you basically, once we got to international judging standard, then you got invited.
And what made you want to do that? Was it a matter of almost like a community service, I want to give back now, or was it just I'm still fascinated with the sport, but I'm not going to be competing, so the next best thing is judging those people competing?
You got to, and
right.
I think knowing, like when we're sitting on a judging panel and you've been a competitor, and I'm not saying that everyone that's a judge needs to have been a competitor, because we've got some amazing judges with amazing eyes that would never step foot on stage. In fact, a very good friend of ours who was head judge for Australia, he'd never stepped on stage, but he judged Olympians, everything. So lots of really, really good people. But from when you've been a competitor at that level, we take our job really, really seriously. So we will not stop. I mean, we've got a really good eye, so you can pick your top 3 to 5 pretty quickly, and then process of an elimination. But we're very, very tuned into what's going on stage for these people. And we've got that appreciation of what they're going through, what they've been through to get to where they are. And we just passionate about making sure that we get it right.
Yeah.
You know, that's, isn't it? Yeah.
What do you think with the way that the sport has sort of changed? You know, when, say, the Frank Zane era where it was very aesthetic and he was a smaller kind of guy, and then it sort of moved into the mass monsters kind of thing, and then that progressed through, you know, you had Lee Haney for 8 years in a row, and then, you know, Dorian Yates, and, you know, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, to where you've got guys now that are walking around like 140-something kilos at 3% body fat, you know, stepping on stage.
Big rummy style.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see that he did actually get his conditioning to a point where he could be the winner, although I do think if Phil Heath had sort of kept it together for a couple of years longer, he still would have reigned over. But do you sort of, your thoughts on how the sport has progressed, and are you sort of happy with the direction that it's going?
Yeah, do you see that as a natural progression from the classic physique through the mass era to what we have now, or do you feel like there should perhaps there was another path that wasn't explored?
I think there's a place for all those categories. I think it's all part of the bodybuilding mix, and there's different. I like the fact that they're bringing the classic back.
Yeah.
Because it's very artistic.
Yeah.
And it really shows of the presentation of the competitors is the Frank, going back to the Frank Zane.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant. And then they're by no means small guys either.
No.
They're not. You know, even what's the class, the guys with sorry, the long pants.
Oh, the shorts. Yeah.
It's still a fantastic division.
Yeah,
and they're
you
not
got me
small
now.
guys either.
I get so confused now.
I'm
thinking figure, but I
and so I think there's
men's
a place
physique. Men's physique.
Men's
That's
physique. I think there's a place for all of it, and people. Let's face it, people love seeing big guys, and for the promoters, I mean, it puts a lot of bums on seats. And get some good shows. So.
I love seeing the big guys as well. I mean,
everybody
loves to see a freak on stage. After all, like that's the big draw card. But the aesthetics of those classic guys is just
and the posing.
It's nice to see that mix.
Yeah. I'm a bit.
So you feel comfortable that things have kind of in the last few years have kind of dissected so that everybody does have that opportunity to shine a little bit more.
Let's face it, there's a lot of different body types, isn't it? And some guys just fit into that physique category, and some guys are just mesomorphs like that. They're big power lifters that, man, you get lean and you can be something massive, and that's the genetic thing again, I guess.
What did you think with the era where they had, and it's still sort of prevalent, the sort of the big belly growth that was
distended?
I think there was a
bubble gut bonanzas.
Big rush on human growth hormone somewhere along the way.
Yeah, that's right.
Dabbling too much in some of that stuff.
It was good to see it sort of getting penalised in a way.
Yeah. I mean, lots of federations, some they encourage the big guys. And so these guys, their preparation is much different to the A and B because of the drug testing and all of that. I'm not going to get into who takes what and who does what, but
Oh.
getting back,
I want names.
getting back to when we were coaching people and helping people through comps, we'd see a person for the first time and we'd ask the brutal questions. Are you using any gear? And they'd go, oh, why? Because, well, if you are, I don't care. I don't really
the
care
diet
if
we're
you
trying
are.
to get you on. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it affects exactly the whole how all the pieces
All
come
the rest
together.
of the chemistry, all of the rest of the biology.
We'd never judge. I mean, we wouldn't want someone that's using to. I'm not saying even using's a bad thing, as long as you're not doing it in a clean comp.
Yeah,
right.
You know, there's always performance
enhancing
drugs and
make your own decision.
cycling is the first thing that comes to mind. But
Yeah.
sure, it's in a
It's
lot
so
of
crazy,
sports.
isn't it? Yeah,
But,
absolutely. Even tennis, Peter Corder, do you remember him? He got busted
Oh,
with
yeah.
steroids.
Yeah.
He's skinny as a rake. It was like a tennis player.
He needed more.
Yeah, it
obviously,
wasn't what
but you know. And with the way that the sport is now, so you've really seen the sport, kind of thrive over the last 30 or 40 years, from almost like an outsider kind of sport to one now. Almost everybody's got a gym membership. Almost everybody who goes to the gym. So the kind of almost mainstream culture now is that gym
You know what
culture.
I have noticed. Admittedly, I haven't been in the gym for a few weeks, but still train. Is that people's technique is so much better. Whereas I remember when we were first training together many moons ago, technique was terrible, and you'd just close your eyes or you'd just turn your head because you wanted to go over and say something to someone.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed of recent times is that technique is really good out there.
Yeah.
Except I've never seen so many women do so many glute exercises.
That's the trend at the moment, isn't it?
It's all about the
Stairmaster.
All the
glutes.
booty, the hip
Yeah.
thrust. We've got 3 hip thrust machines.
3 of them.
3.
Yeah.
Wow.
Put 2 booty builders and then like a standalone hip thrust.
Have you ever seen more unusual ways of girls using Smith machines?
Yeah.
Have you, have,
Doing
you,
down there.
have you seen somebody do like the leg press with the Smith machine? Well, like they lay on their back and they'll unhook it with their hand and then their feet are on the bar and it's pushing up and down.
Oh, I
And
haven't
it's
seen
like,
that
my God,
one.
you're going to
Vertical
get
leg
crushed.
press.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my
But with a
God.
Smith.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. So no, I think everyone, lots of people in their training, and the other thing that I've noticed as well, which is really cool to see, not only is the technique good, but the age group is literally from young right the way through to people that are a lot older than we are.
Yeah.
And so women in there that are in their mid 70s or more. That are training properly and training hard and doing things really, really well. That's really good to see.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for those that aren't working hard and training well, there's always like active wear that
Compression tights.
yeah. So having seen a lot and been a part of that bodybuilding history over the last 30 years or so now, where do you see the future of the sport? Okay. That was a good question.
Stumper, yeah.
I like that one.
Well, the first thing that popped in my head is it's now almost not an expected lifestyle, but it's just almost the norm.
Yeah.
Where even at Christmas time, our son Paul knows a lot of guys that are into bodybuilding, and it seems the normal. He said you guys were freaks
Back then.
and we were just the odd ones out.
Yeah.
Now it's like everyone does it.
Yeah.
Isn't that
It's
interesting?
changing.
So it's become mainstream a little bit in the same way that MMA has become that mainstream combat sport now. Probably more people will be exposed to a UFC event over the next 12 months than they would a boxing event, for instance. And now you're starting to see bodybuilding start to absorb that mainstream, that middle ground. That no one would have predicted 15, 20 years ago, I'm sure.
I don't think so. I do remember there were times when I'd be walking around and I'd be thinking, what are you looking at? And then you'd sort of put yourself
I'm
up.
huge. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I was a big girl and stand next to a normal human being.
Right.
Yeah, okay, I think I know what they're
Well,
looking
you
at. Now, you're not supposed to have
Catch a
biceps
glimpse of
quite
yourself
that
in a shop window.
big, you know?
Yeah. Well, you're surrounded by the people in the gym, and that's your friends, and everyone's into it. And then when you go to like a public, like a shopping mall or something like that, and everyone's like, what is going on? There's something that's like, oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I think going back to something, a question that you asked before about, you're all encompassed into that world. What else do you do? One of the big things with work and that type of thing, whilst I did some personal training and so on, was that we say this a lot to people as well, there is a life after bodybuilding.
Yeah.
You have to separate.
It's called judging.
Slowly
You have your career, and most of the people that we competed with had a life outside of that. So they worked 9 to 5 in a normal job doing normal things, and then they had their bodybuilding world. It wasn't their 24/7, even though the discipline was 24/7. We all had life outside of that, and we had careers. So when we stopped competing, we had something else that that was in part of our life.
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting now. I think the trend is, it seems to be like the people that are sort of getting into fitness and building muscle. For me, I'm seeing a lot more people going and pushing towards social media fame and creating their own sort of platform and sort of
following.
Like Larry Wheels and all this that sort of thing. Callan von Moger and those kind of guys, where it's like they're like, I don't need to win a show to be successful in bodybuilding. I mean, it's he's not saying, hey, look, I'm a
You can be commercially successful without having the titles.
Exactly, yeah, which is an interesting aspect, because it wasn't, maybe it's been the last 10 years where people have sort of made that move to, well, I can find another way, I can find another avenue with this. I don't have to be Mr. Olympia before I can actually start being successful in this industry.
I think people felt they needed belts and titles before they had the authority to be, whatever. And now it's a matter of, I've done my glutes 4 times this week. I'm ready. So, here I come, Instagram.
Working their selfie muscle.
So, what was some really excellent bits of bro science advice that you received early on in your career? 13 years old, you're in the gym. Was there some old dude that sat in the corner and dispensed advice like 3 sets, 10 reps? That's what you do. Or what was some of the?
That's pretty close. I mean, the guy that ran the gym at Limbo back then, he was a wrestler,
right?
And that was back in the Larry O'Day and the. Do you remember?
No, I don't.
I'm going right back. Mario Milano, you do.
I do. Mario Milano. Yeah. We know the name.
All those back in that. He was one of the wrestlers of that era, and big fellow, and he was about pushing heavy weights and eat big. Something pretty basic, but always train with intent and purpose. Intensity and purpose. Yeah. Don't just walk in there haphazardly and do it wrong. Just make sure you're doing it right. Do it heavy and eat.
And eat lots.
It's pretty basic.
And did you have like a little go-to, like before, say, protein shakes were a big thing? Did you get into the molten chocolate, or did you drink like 4 litres of milk before you did bench press, and then 6 litres afterwards? Or what was there a thing that you got into? Eggs? Or
when I was a kid.
As you're getting into it, as you're starting to train and you're listening to the old guys in the gym and you're seeing...
There was no supplementation back then. I mean, I didn't even take it.
Molten milk or something.
Something about glucose. Eat lots of jelly beans. Make sure
jelly beans. Jelly beans were the performance enhancers of the 1970s. The good ones.
The ones from the chemist.
It's crazy how the supplement industry has really exploded over the last, say, 20 years.
They stepped up from the jelly beans to a whole bunch of others.
You probably wouldn't. I mean, when you guys first trained, did they have protein powder? Was there protein bars? Was there, all those sorts of things?
I was sponsored by Masashi, which I was really, that was
awesome.
amazing.
Yeah.
I never drank a protein drink. Never had a protein drink.
Until the sponsorship, or even during the
never.
Sorry,
never.
Masashi, by the way, if you are
watching.
Used
to pour it down the drain.
No.
Wayne had it all.
Oh, no.
Putting on Wheat Bix in the morning.
Basically, what they did was give me an allowance per month.
Oh, for supplements?
For supplements. And I didn't, I wasn't into protein drinks at all. So basically, I used all of their ranges of amino acids.
Okay.
Nice. So in their purest form. Yep. Why would I want to digest a protein drink? They they tasted horrible anyway. They used to make me feel crook.
Yep.
They're a lot better now, from my understanding. I still don't want to touch one. So I basically used all of their range of products, which was amazing.
I guess you came to the gym and you had a really good mentor group early on in your career. So I guess the advice you were getting from the get-go was pretty good.
The advice that I was getting was the best in the business. Nick Jones was probably my biggest mentor at that level. He at that time was the looking after Musashi. He's obviously expanded and now has his own supplement company. So he taught me an awful lot in that very, very early stage of 97 to 98. And it was late 97 that he gave me my sponsorship.
Wow.
He moved on not that long after that. I think it was only a couple of years after that, but Musashi continued to sponsor me, which was great. So they would pay for sending me into state and things like that. And gave me an allowance of product. And I use that religiously. I swear by Musashi.
Right.
Musashi have some of the most amazing products. And I would agree that Gentech would absolutely as well.
It's interesting to see the progression of brands that were coming in, and you see the ones that were very low budget and would just fall away after a couple of years. And it was always that, they'd just be throwing dirt cheap powder, really. It was just terrible, tasted terrible, didn't mix. I remember I had one and it was just floating on top. No matter, I would stir it for 20 minutes and it would still be floating on top. You
It was
put
like
it in
a
a blender.
cake on top of your milk.
It would not mix in the water. It was like oil and water.
Was that Megamass 2000 by any chance?
And the protein bars was like eating cardboard.
Yeah, the major ingredient there is asbestos.
Yes, they're still not fantastic. They're all better than they were, but they're still not great.
Do you know what? I'd rather hoe into a piece of chicken or something, or some fish or whatever other protein than touch a protein bar.
Their marketing is
horrible things.
Their marketing works so well, unfortunately, because people. We've got where I'm working. The front of the gym is a shop basically, and there's all the different protein powders and fat burners and all the rest of it. But people are coming in and they're semi-educated on what they want, and I need the fat burner, and then I need the creatine, I need the thing, and it's like, how often are you training? What else are you doing?
Once a month.
Once, I haven't actually trained yet, but
I did get the membership, and I am thinking about it.
That's expensive, you're on.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
You've actually got to be training hard.
Or if people bring up, like, say they get a tub of creatine, they bring it up, and go, hey, so you know what creatine does? No. Oh, why are you buying it?
Jim Bro said.
Or somebody said to get it. I'm like, do you know how it works or anything? No, I had no idea.
Wow, yeah.
So what's your advice now to young women that might be thinking about following in your footsteps?
Find yourself a good coach. Find yourself somebody that has got some sort of scientific background, as opposed to just
Wayne?
somebody that's in the gym.
Find Wayne.
Look for somebody that has achieved what you're looking to achieve. So somebody that has been there and done that. Because then the proof's in the pudding, really, isn't it? Really questioning their knowledge base, what they've studied, what they haven't studied, can you explain to me why I'm taking glutamine, or can you explain to me why I should be looking at creatine or whatever other supplement it might be? So somebody that's got some serious knowledge, and had success in the past with other competitors.
So you'd recommend to a young woman, 25-year-old woman, who's to go down that path in 2022?
I can't see any reason why not. I think it's a good, healthy lifestyle.
Fantastic.
I just think it's all about balance and making sure that you understand exactly what it is that you're doing, diet in, diet out, have a good mental approach to what you're doing. Understand that bodybuilding is not the be-all and end-all in the world, that, there is a life after that, and you can still have a successful career and family and all of those things. It's a lifestyle, yeah, but don't become 100% completely consumed by it. We would still have a dinner party with all of our bodybuilding friends and play stupid games and build human pyramids because we're all built so we could all get on top. That was a classic
I hate to see the food bill, by the way.
Well, I think you were at my 50th
Yes,
birthday.
yeah,
Did
You were on
see
top of the pyramid.
Were you in the pyramid?
was
I'm
in
not
mine,
sure.
mate.
The foundation stone.
So what I'm saying is don't take it too darn seriously
Right,
and
yeah.
just have some fun.
Absolutely.
Enjoy it. Get some balance.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the be all and end all, but it's a really good. It's a great lifestyle. To
Someone venturing into bodybuilding, like if they really, you look at a picture and you can go, oh, I want to look like that. Ask what price you got to pay to look like that.
Yeah.
And ask that person, what'd you do? And
Yeah.
and completely understand that there's no shortcut.
Yeah.
You've got to do that. You've got to put in the yards. There's no shortcuts. And then be prepared to pay the price. It's not negotiable.
Yeah.
You want to do that, you'll get that. Simple.
Yeah.
And from
looking-
sorry.
No, just looking for the fast tracks, just really.
It's frustrating, isn't it? That people think that they can get it. Just take this stuff and I can
Little
get.
magic
No,
pill.
you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from your perspective, having kind of both kind of grown up in this world, what are some of the things that you took from your bodybuilding life that you're able to apply in other areas?
Wow.
Yeah. Because Lorraine, you enjoyed a great corporate career as well outside of bodybuilding.
Yeah, I think when you're that disciplined, you can basically turn that to anything that you want to do in your life. So I basically took all of the concepts of the discipline of bodybuilding and brought that over to my corporate life, which was...
And could you kind of see some of the failings in people in the corporate world, and it was just, okay, it's discipline, or it's kind of that thing that we see in the gym, but it's over here.
Yeah, look, I'm smiling because I didn't love everyone in the corporate world. I don't think anyone does. Obviously, there are going to be times when you're going to have some sort of personality clash with. But surprisingly, the company that I was working with had a lot of very, very successful athletes as part of the corporate team. In fact, Gilbert Anoka, who is the mind coach for the All Blacks, was the head of the academy that taught me how to be a trainer in my real estate training career.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of the corporate people had been an elite athlete at some point in their career.
Yeah.
So that was interesting question. When I think about it, most of them were
seems-
footballers, tennis players, all sorts of different careers.
Excellent sense to boil over into other fields very, very comfortably.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And finally, your plans now. Do you both? You're training now. You I know you've just kitted out a studio at home, so you're doing a lot of drumming. So is that as close as we're getting to resistance these days?
I haven't been in the gym since just after Christmas because this project has taken over my life. But no,
But the muscle memory, it'll all come back. Don't worry. Yeah.
The chest.
I'll have that.
The chest.
I'll have that 3 weeks of agony as you do when you get back into it. But I still love doing it.
Yeah.
It's just
Do you
time.
feel guilty when you move away from it for a time? Is that what it feels like for you, Lorraine? Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes life does get in the way, and there's been a lot happening in our lives of over the last few months with different family members and so on. So it's been quite a challenging period. Yeah. So we're, no sooner had you got yourself into that kind of routine where you've just literally, you're dropping everything because you need to do something else that's part of what's happening in your world at the moment. I much prefer it when I'm in the gym. I get in, I get training, and I get out. I'm in there for probably 40 minutes, if that. And train, do the body part, get out. And I've always kind of been a bit that way, but always feel so much better when I am back in the gym. And I do get a bit guilty, and I don't feel as good when I'm not.
Yeah.
When I'm training and I'm doing and weights and so on, I generally feel better all over.
Yeah. So do you feel it's ever anything that you would stop doing at this stage in your lives? It sounds like it's going to be.
Not at this stage. Maybe it's something.
Keep going till you can't go anymore. Is that the idea?
I think it's
ride it till the wheels come off. Yeah.
Pretty well.
I actually think it's really important that we actually take it a little bit more seriously again. As in terms of both of us.
Determinations are being made here on the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. So
honesty is coming back to you.
that critical eye is going back the other way maybe now.
Eighth place, was it?
Thought we'd sweat that one under the rug.
I think it's really important that we just take it a whole lot more seriously and make it a bit more about lifestyle again, especially as you're starting to get older. The people that I do know that have continued to moderately weight train have a far better way of life than people that don't. We're lucky that we got that foundation. So when I start training, things change really, really quickly.
Even now?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I did a good couple of months stint in the gym where I was training moderately and having massages in between. And the masseuse said to me, I just can't believe the change in you from then to then.
Wow.
It just all comes back. So once that foundation's there, so I think from our point of view, we probably need to take it a little bit more seriously to get a longevity of being able to do all the things that we like to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we've got a snapshot now. So in 3 months' time, when we do this again, we'll have a before and an after. So, so if you want a quick pose, now's the time. No, well, thanks so much for coming into the podcast. It's been absolutely amazing to hear more of your story. Having known you for so long, you know, you don't always find all the bits and pieces and the gaps in the story. So it's been absolutely wonderful to hear it and to be able to share that story with all of our viewers as well. So thanks so much for joining us again, Lorraine and Wayne March, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, the double biceps are out one more time. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into the Daily Combat podcast once again. And of course, we'll look forward to bringing you more next week. Thanks, guys.